You gave my life to me, set me free, set me free. The finest years I ever
Yeah, there's sort of a
lived.
contrast, Rome versus the two giant symbols, Rome and its eagle, and the most awesome edifice in Israel, and the center of their religious life is the temple, and that's the clash. And here's Jesus right in the middle of it. And
Precisely. He is caught right between those two forces.
well, look at that temple. It's less than 40 years later that that thing is torn down. You know, that
It,
building is
it,
gone.
it's completely gone. And people that would have listened to Jesus' advice when that all went down would have likely survived with their lives, because Jesus' advice was, when you see it surrounded by armies, leave,
Mm-hmm.
as
Yeah.
opposed to the Judeo-nationalist view of, no, this is like our country, our political identity is everything, and so it's worth everything. Most of those folks lost their lives in a horrific way.
Josephus, who writes the history of the temple coming
Yeah,
down, he
yeah,
talks about how they had a mindset that the temple was untouchable. It was God's
yeah.
temple. You could try
Nobody
to,
will ever take this thing down.
yeah,
Yeah,
you can't. And so if you want to be safe, just be close to the temple. So you don't
yeah,
leave the city. You hang out at the temple. And
yeah,
then Josephus describes in vivid detail the Romans coming in and killing these zealots, even in the temple. Like
yeah,
they're fighting outside of the temple, and eventually gets to the point to where they're in their last holdup. Surely we'll be safe in here. They come into the temple and get butchered, and then the temple is taken down. And
yeah,
so much for the might of a political religious system institution. It
yeah,
begins with Jesus cleansing the temple, and they have almost 40 years to of testing before the thing comes down. They have a generation basically, and like you said, the ones who heed the message, they are no longer relying on the temple or the
yeah,
might of their country. They
yeah,
have to make a choice between the kingdoms, the might of Israel or the might, the hope of the kingdom of God. And it's just
yeah,
weird. What's so central in this painting and so central in the Jewish mindset, the temple. Uh, you know, zoom back just a blip later, it's gone forever.
yeah,
Why don't we go to the passage?
yeah.
And as is our custom, why don't you read it, and we'll uh, probably interrupt with comments. I'm guessing. We'll see. We're at John 18, and we're going to do 28 through 40, if that sounds good.
That sounds really good. Then the Jewish leaders took Jesus from Caiaphas. By now it's early morning, and to avoid ceremonial uncleanness, they did not enter the palace because they wanted to be able to eat the Passover. So Pilate came out to them and asked, "What charges are you bringing against this man?" "If he were not a criminal," they replied, "we would not have handed him over to you." There's some classic straw man sort of
Yeah, he must be
legalese going
guilty
on there.
because he must be guilty because we're bringing him.
Pilate said, "Take him yourselves and judge him by your own law." "We have no right to execute anyone," they objected. This took place to fulfill what Jesus had said about the kind of death he was going to die.
Several times Jesus talks about being lifted up in his death, and that has a dual meaning. Lifted up from the standpoint of being visible to everybody as something to look upon for rescue and salvation, but it's also a very graphic description of hanging on a cross. When he's hanging on the cross and they want to give him something to drink, they have to put a sponge on a pole and lift it up to him. So he's up for everyone to see. And apparently, the only kind of death he could die where he's lifted up is a Roman kind of a death.
I feel like it's worth just reminding everybody how gnarly this is. I think we get we get overly comfortable with the symbol of the cross, right? In part because as Protestants we don't have the crucifix where Jesus's body is still on it. We just have an empty, clean cross. But this is brutal, and young Jesus would have walked by plenty of people
Yeah.
dying on a cross throughout his life. So he, as it forms in him, and I don't, who knows how it came to him, how that was going to go, but it's heavy, you know, it's heavy stuff.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, you say young Jesus, and I think about any young Jewish kid heading into Jerusalem for the Passover or one of the other festivals. And probably that was the time that the Romans would say, well, this is good timing for us to publicly execute and display people that fight against us. And you can see why they want to take Rome down. It's like, I'm coming to
yeah,
worship and I've got to walk past these corpses hanging on
yeah,
poles. And my kids have to see that. And
yeah,
you envision parents saying, somehow we have to get on this road to get into town. We have to walk past this. And my kids, and are they covering? Or maybe they're saying, kids, look at this. We're not going to stand for this. God's going to come and redeem us, and this is not
yeah,
going to happen. And no wonder they want a Barabbas Jesus instead of a Jesus.
yeah, yeah. But this is a collective, systemic betrayal of Jesus. Like Jesus is a Jew, you know, he's one of them. He is an Israelite, and his own people, his own leaders, the very people that are charged with, leading the people of God, or supposedly that's the role they play, hand him over to this entity that you just so aptly described how it operates, what its mode of operation is. It's brutal. Like it's it's the empire that is really, really good at being an empire. Like they're not troubled with a friender, kindlier form of empire. They're just, we're an empire. Um, and I think as I've sat just with this story as part of my morning meditation time, that like really hit me, the sadness of that, like what it would be like to be the one person pushed out and handed over to Pilate by your own people, by your own
Mhm.
tribe. There's an enormous collective betrayal in that, I think.
Mhm.
Pilate then went back inside the palace, summoned Jesus, and asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" "Is that your own idea?" Jesus asked, "or did others talk to you about me?" "Am I a Jew?" Pilate replied. "Your own people and chief priests handed you over to me. What is it you've done?"
I I see a sassiness in Jesus. Is that your idea,
Yeah, yeah,
or did other?
I would be glad today just to have you back again, just to touch you once again.